Okay, hello again everybody. Welcome to another story or another video on the submarine. So in the last video I explained how we almost lost our lives to this animal, and we saw it on one other occasion when it reached out the water. So in any case, some weeks go by, a month, I'm not quite sure how long it is, and Uncle Arthur Ridgway, comes to my father and he says, "Hey, next time you're out there catching a great white shark, can you bring me a big jaw back?" And by that time, the submarine had disappeared for a while, and my father was still going out all the time hunting this animal. And in the process of pursuing the submarine, he actually caught 28 great white sharks, and the biggest one he caught was 4.7 meters long. It was a big male. So my dad said to Uncle Arthur, he said, "Arthur, I don't fish for other men. If you want a jaw, you get on a boat and you come out with me, and we'll catch a great white shark, and that'll be your jaw. But you got to help catch this animal." So on this particular day, I never went to sea with them. So Arthur, my father, and I think it was Rodney, from what I remember, they went out to sea to hunt the submarine. At that time, my dad was bringing in big sharks. He was trying to catch the biggest sharks, so anything under 4 meters or so, he'd pull the bait out the water and wait for the shark to go away and wait for a bigger shark to come. He was really specifically looking for the submarine. So they go out to sea, beautiful day in False Bay. They go back to the water tower, and about a 4.2 meter great white shark comes to the boat. And my father hooks this animal, and they fight it, and the normal thing, you're circling the animal, and it's a good hook. The shark's well hooked, and about an hour and a half, 45 minutes later, they've got this big, over 4 meter great white shark next to the boat. Now, 4 meter great white shark is a big animal. It's a bus. We call it a bus. I mean, it's an animal like this. And so my father is sitting in the fighting chair, and what we used to do when we had this big loop, there's a big metal loop like this with a handle on it, and attached to the metal loop was a nylon rope, and it was clipped on with little copper wires all around this big loop. So when you got the shark to the boat, you'd go to the front of the boat, and you would hold the cable, or you'd cleat the cable to the front of the boat, and then you'd idle the boat forward so the shark came up next to the boat, and then you take this hoop and you put it around the shark's tail, and then you just rip the lasso, and it pulls all the little copper cables off, and now you got the shark by the tail. You release it in the front of the boat, the shark swings around, and then you just tow the shark back to harbor. And by the time you get back to harbor, because it was about an 8-9 mile run, about say 16 kilometer run, and when you get back to the harbor, the shark was normally dead or completely exhausted and just about dying. So that's how we did it. So in any case, they get the shark to the boat, they're getting ready to go to the same process. My father's sitting in the fighting chair like this, and Uncle Arthur's got the cable, and he's trying to organize, trying to manipulate the shark into position to go cleat the cable. And my dad looks up past Arthur Ridgway, and he just sees the submarine coming. He looks over right past Arthur, and he just sees this monster coming on the surface. And my dad shouts to Arthur. He says, "Arthur, let the shark go! Let the shark go!" And Arthur didn't register, so he turns to my dad, and he says, "What are you talking about?" And my dad says, "Let the fucking cable go! You're gonna lose your hands." And then Arthur turns around, and he sees the sub coming up, and he just lets the cable go. So the shark, the 4.2 meter shark, is next to the boat and starts wallowing. It's exhausted, so it's wallowing like that a little bit. And the sub comes up. This is how big the submarine is. The submarine comes up and hits that shark midships. This is a 4.2 meter great white shark that the submarine takes as live bait. And the submarine comes up, hits that shark midships, grabs onto it, turns around, and takes off. Now my father's sitting there and watching, a bit bewildered, and forgets that he's still connected to the rod and everything. And next thing, the line pulls straight, and he almost gets ripped out of the fighting chair. So he gets his balance and he gets his composure. So there he's sitting now, holding the rod, and the sub is going down. Pulls that shark, the 4.2 meter shark, and it pulls the drum down under the water, and it just goes down. And my dad's holding onto the rod, and he tightens up. So now he's sitting there fighting the submarine that's got the shark that he just caught a few minutes prior, and it's down there in the depths. And my dad says he couldn't remember exactly how long it took, but he says it might have been up to 15 minutes that he had this submarine on the end of the line. But it ran down, but then it didn't run too far from the boat. And he says next thing, the float comes up to the surface, and right off the float hits the surface, the submarine comes out the water with this other shark, like a bow in its mouth. And it comes out the water like that with the shark, and he says it probably came up to its pectoral fin. So the whole head, and for want of a better term, the whole chest of the submarine comes out the water, holding this other shark in its jaws. It comes out the water like that, splashes down, and starts ripping the other shark to pieces on the surface. And so it starts ripping this thing up, on the surface, and then it dives again, and it goes down back with the shark. And at some point, my dad doesn't know what happened down there, but somehow the hook got ripped out of the other shark's mouth. So possibly the submarine rolled on the cable a bit, or whatever it may be, or the shark didn't have a really good, the hook didn't have a really good purchase in the shark. Nobody really knows, but the hook came out of the 4.2 meter great white shark, and my father felt the pressure go off, so he reeled it in, and he says, seconds later, 30 seconds later, a minute later, whatever it was, he said all this like decomposed food started floating to the surface, decomposed seals and stuff that obviously the other great white shark had in its gut. And the submarine was below, out of sight, obviously ripping the shark to pieces and feeding on it. So that was the last time we saw the submarine, that was the last time we saw the submarine. So my father saw it on 4 occasions, I saw it on 3 occasions, and that was it. And we never saw it again. He went out hunting for it weekend after weekend. But what happened, it must have been about 3 months later, and I wasn't on the boat again. I wasn't on the boat. My father had become very notorious or well known in the great white shark hunting game. So he started getting phone calls from people wanting to go out and actually sports fish these great white sharks. So he started taking the odd client out with him. And on this particular day, he took some holiday maker out to catch a great white shark. And yes, he had a holiday maker, that's right. He had a holiday maker on the boat. So it was my father, the holiday maker, and I think Frank or Trevor, one of the guys, Rodney, went out with my father. And they went to the same spot, Macassar Beach. That was our favorite place to hunt these great white sharks. And they hooked a big animal. It was close to 4 meters apparently, but not. No, sorry, hang on, that's another story. I'm not even tell that story. That's not all that interesting. So what I'm going to do now, let me just finish this video. I'm sorry, and I'm going to tell you the story I'm supposed to be telling you right after this.